The moral degeneration of Singaporean society was one of the main concerns of young Singaporeans today. So my question was, it's really difficult to sort of implement a kind of like a altruistic policy that would handle this something so intangible as moral degeneration. But if there were, do you think? So my question was, do you think that there would be any kinds of concrete policies? There wouldn't be, right, sir? That was my answer. I just wanted to see if you agreed, sir.
So the question I'm asking is, as for the education, recently there's been more focus on values. Am I right? So because of this, right? Usually for our education, throughout my education, in primary school, secondary school, you have always have something called the civics and moral, as well as this kind of social lessons you have with little booklets and stuff like that. So when that happens, it usually spurs off one time of emotions where we feel the need to help others. But over the long run, for this kind of values for myself, I pick it up from my family and not really from school. So do you think that this kind of implementations are really that effective, or are they just waste of time? Yeah, that's my question. Thanks.
What do you think?
As for myself, I've mentioned already, most of the things I learn, all the values I have, are usually from my family and not really from school. So that's why usually for this kind of lessons, teachers would take it out and say, all right, let's have maths lesson if they are our math teacher, for example. So it's not really that useful at all.
And my question is in response to the poll just now, whereby 53% of the students were worried about unemployment and recession. With regards to the middle class, which is a majority of our society, the group of people that work extremely hard to maintain their current lifestyle, what more do you think can be done to help this group of people, because they'll be the one that will be most severely affected if any economic were to hit Singapore?
I warned you, I don't always answer these questions without asking you back. What do you think can be done?
From a student's perspective, sir, I genuinely don't have an answer.
My question is concerning that Singaporeans seem to be becoming more self-centered and pampered and more concerned about themselves, such that whenever something goes wrong, they accuse the government. What is your view on this? And if you agree, why is this so, and what can be done to improve the situation?
Because as an art student, I understand that we are actually the minority of the pre-U cohort. Because there are more science students, definitely. And just a few days ago, my principal was sharing with us this article on how art students have no future.
So maybe you would like to give your response to that.
So DPM Sir, I'd like to ask if this is really true in Singapore, and if there really is no future for us as students as compared to those who are taking science.
The main idea of the education system is to get jobs in the first place, right? Well, initially, let's say. But say, even in school, even in SOTA right now, there's this emphasis of certain jobs students should take. For example, the science stream has been and always been very popular, partly because there's a lot of development in that field. So I was wondering, there's always been an emphasis on certain kind of fields. So how much liberty can a student like myself take? Especially when there's, even in my school, where we are supposed to be focused in the arts, there's this special thing where only the best, the cream of the cream, can take double science. So there's a demand in that. So, my first question is, how can you develop? How can a student get liberty in doing what they want, to follow their passion and not their?
So are you doing double science?
Yes.
Why?
because I'm afraid. Because first, parental pressure. Two, because it supposedly opened more options for my future. Yeah, so I'm taking the escalator where everyone is going right now. I personally, if I could have what I want, I would want to be
Yeah.
an actor. But yeah.
I'm really quite amused by this, you see, because, we have this wonderful school called SOTA. And then you go to SOTA, and then you feel somehow that you're constrained. You now have this wonderful school which we never had before, and then you go there and you feel that somehow your horizons have been dimmed because you've gone to SOTA. Is that really true?
But
If we didn't have SOTA, you mean your horizons would be broader? Can't be, right?
I mean, like even there's a newspaper article that you open SOTA, but you don't want all your students to go into a plain art field. Like it's specifically stated that not all SOTA students should actually go into the creative arts field. So in that way, aren't we already restricted in itself?
No, I don't think so. You're restricting yourself in your own mind because of the choices that you have made. So I think you have to understand what are the choices that you have made and what are the choices which the opportunities provided you.
Well, you mentioned that economic growth of a country actually has an impact of population size. As such, would you say that this brain drain and the issue of migration for economic opportunities abroad can be attributed to one's lack of loyalty and civic obligation to Singapore?
What do you think? I'm going to do this to all of you, because if you ask me a question, it's not a question for me to answer, it's a question for you to answer as well.
In my opinion, I do think that this issue of migration for economic opportunities can be attributed to lack of loyalty and civic obligation in the sense that there's a lack of rootedness and there's also minimal social identity in Singapore, which leaves there little incentives for Singaporeans to stay.
With regard to this shrinking population and this need to engender a sense of belonging in Singapore, I feel that this is born out of the formation of a national identity in Singapore and preserving our shared heritage. As such, I think that preserving this shared heritage should take primacy in our policy making, and issues such as the Bukit Brown issue, the fiasco about building a highway over Bukit Brown.
Can I ask you where you live?
I live in Pasir Panjang, which is quite far away from that. But besides
Where in Pasir Panjang?
Near Kenridge Park.
Okay.
Yes. Anyway, so in this sense, I see that the government, I think, is it's prioritizing pragmatism over preserving our shared heritage, and I think this is going to be detrimental to Singapore in the long run when we do not really have a nation with a sense of, with people, with citizens have a sense of belonging to Singapore, but just a money-making factory.
So my question is quite similar in the sense that I'm talking about the use of economic rhetoric as the inspiration for our sense of belonging. That we've been talking about that transformation of Singapore, which helps root people when they feel inspired by the kind of progress that we've made. Unfortunately, I feel that our generation did not take part in the economic struggle. So I find that we need to rethink the way that we engage with this generation, that we need to move beyond the economic progress train of thought, because it doesn't really apply to us anymore.
So what does?
So I feel that, we've been talking about family, we've been talking about community spirit. I think these things are the things that will root us, which is why I'm quite inspired by the way that there's been emphasis on community, but I feel that we are still sticking too much to that economic progress, that train of thought.
I'd like to just ask that, because the control of the press has ensured the stability of the country in the past 40 years. However, us digital natives have been exposed to alternative sources of news, such as the New York Times and The Economist. So, as being exposed to these new sources of news, we've been turned off by the censorship, lack of press freedom, manipulation by the government, and of the press. I'm not done, guys, relax. Just last year, we even arrested a journalist. So what would the government do to address these concerns of the new generation regarding press freedom?